Get out the insurance cards, get out the copays. The office is open, my friends. Brought to you by drroto.com.
What is up, and welcome in. We are the One and Done Show. We are your fast break of college basketball information. I am your host, Eric Romoff. You can catch me on those Twitter streets at FantasyNav, and he is the OG, the original Money Mike. He is MC Holland34 on Twitter. He is the captain of our ships at Green Screens Media. He is Mr. Mike Holland. Mike, what it do? Welcome in. You ready to chat a little conference tournament?
I can't believe we decided to do this. But if we want to be big dogs in the college basketball world, man, these are the things we need to do. So yeah, we are going to be talking conference tourney previews for pretty much 12 conferences. I think we counted. I don't know. I lost count after after we started going through these. But I'm excited to talk about these teams and who could surprise in these one bid leagues that we're going to talk about. Where maybe some coin, some value could be if you're in the betting market here in a few days when these lines start to pop up. So yeah, excited to rock and roll with this thing, man. How you feeling?
Man, I'm feeling good. You nailed it right off the top. We're talking about 12 conferences here, and look, a peek behind the scenes, right? A peek behind the curtains. We were talking about how we wanted to approach covering conference tournaments. Maybe we weave them into a recap show. Maybe we do one or two here. And then we just decided if we're going to do it, we might as well do it all. So we're here with the first edition of what will be many, many conference tournament conversations. And like we mentioned a couple times now, we're going 12 deep, basically all but one mid-major and a high major sprinkled in there for good measure. We'll be talking about the teams in the various fields who we believe to be the betting favorites, and then taking a look at some teams that might be able to surprise, and then talking through the ramifications of that, right? If someone pops up and steals a bid, how that might impact the bracket overall. So going to be a fun show. Make sure you have hit that like and subscribe button if you have not already. Like I said, we're going to be pushing out a ton of content now that we are in the Ides of March. So don't want to miss any of that. Being subscribed is the best way to do that. But let's kick it off. Let's start right off with the aforementioned high major, which we are classifying as any league that is going to get multiple bids in, and that is the case with the West Coast Conference. As covered in the recap show from about an hour ago, we're looking very likely at a 2-bid league here with the WCC. KenPom has them ranked 11th out of 32 conferences. They are 10th of the 10 high majors. So sort of right at the precipice here, that cutoff, that cusp between the highest of the high majors and the mid majors. The conference itself sitting atop is St. Mary's at 15-1, followed by Gonzaga at 14-2. Then you have San Francisco at 11-5, Santa Clara at 10-6, San Diego 7-9, Portland at 5-11, as is Loyola Marymount and Pepperdine. And last we have Pacific sitting at 0-16. So, Mike, we kind of alluded to it already. Gonzaga punched their ticket last night, and St. Mary's has won the regular season title. So, kind of feels like both teams are in regardless. I guess the $1 million question, right? Could we have a bid stealer, right? Do you see anyone making any noise outside of these top two?
It's tough, man. I mean, I would put the chances of someone either bid stealing or, because you're probably going to have to beat both of these teams, obviously, the 1 and 2 seed. So you have to knock off both to win this thing. I mean, I'm putting 95% chance that either Gonzaga or St. Mary's wins this thing. That might not be high enough. But just kind of looking at the overall landscape, I think for me, Santa Clara is probably the upset pick I would go with. They're sitting there in the 4 seed. 10-6 in conference play. They're top 4 in the West Coast Conference in offensive and defensive efficiency. They played a pretty solid non-conference, top 100 in that regard. One of the biggest teams in the country. They're 3rd in average height. So a team with a lot of size. They beat Gonzaga by 1 at home in early January. Adama Ball, he was the transfer from Arizona, averaging 14.5 points, 3 boards, 3 assists, a very, very versatile player. So I guess they would be my pick to, if anyone could do it, I think Santa Clara would be the team to do it. Between the two favorites I like, Gonzaga probably the most. Obviously, they're rolling right now. It's easy to say it when they've won 8 straight. They just beat St. Mary's, so a little bit of recency bias here. Top 10 in the country in offensive and 40th in defensive efficiency. The big thing here, and we just kind of touched on it in the recap show, is they made a change in their starting lineup. They went to a jumbo package, putting Anton Watson at the 3. So they have kind of this weird where everybody likes to play 4 guards, spread the floor, maybe only play 1 big. They're basically playing 3 bigs, which is very different. And not a lot of teams are used to playing against that style, which I think makes them very dangerous in the tournament. Graham Ike, phenomenal season, a bounce back, a transfer from Wyoming, 17 points, 7 rebounds. Watson, aforementioned here, 14 points, 7 rebounds. Nolan Hickman's averaging 14 points. And then Ryan Nimhart was everything that they needed at that point guard position. So between the two, because we have I'm ticking it up to 96% chance that one of these two wins the conference here. You going with me with Gonzaga, or are you taking the other side here with our guy coach Randy Bennett?
Man, ticking it up live to 96%. I'll go with Randy Bennett. Look, I mean, part of it is that it's always fun to have conflicting viewpoints whenever we're doing this, but also like St. Mary's, I mean, yes, they lost that most recent game to Gonzaga, but they're coming in as the 1 seed, right? And they're doing a lot of the things that St. Mary's has proven to be successful doing over Coach Bennett's storied tenure, right? They're playing at their slow pace, 357th in tempo, and their defense is absolutely suffocating. 15th in defensive efficiency in the entire country, right? So, like, this year it feels like they've added a bit more offensive firepower than last year, right? Like, almost went undefeated in league play. Obviously, almost doesn't count, but you've got Aiden Mahaney. He's averaging about 14 points per game. Mitchell Saxon, he's averaging 11.5 and chipping in 7 boards, right? So definitely, you can kind of set that most recent loss aside. Don't worry about that little guy. I still think that St. Mary's will be the 1 seed. They'll be the clear favorite, and I think they can pull it off in the tournament. So that is our quick look at the WCC. Now let's slide over to the more traditional mid-majors, right? Out of the multi-bid leagues and into the classic single bid leagues. We're going to start off with one of our favorites, at least one of Jay's favorites, the Missouri Valley Conference, the MVC coming in here. KenPom has them actually ahead of the WCC, 10th out of 32. And because of that, they are first of the 22 mid-major leagues. The conference has a chance to get 2 at-large bids with Indiana State and Drake in the mix, right? So we don't have official seeding quite yet due to the tiebreaker of the 4 and 5 seeds being determined by net rating this coming Monday. But every other seed is pretty much locked in. So we'll talk through the 12 teams in this league. We've got Indiana State sitting at 17-3, Drake right behind them at 16-4. Bradley, pretty solid season overall, 13-7 in their regard. Then we have some of the murkiness between 4 and 5. We'll say they're sharing these 2 seeds, that being Northern Iowa and Belmont, each of them sitting with 12-8 records. Southern Illinois, the Salukis, 11-9 on the year. Illinois State as well as Murray State, both sitting at 9-11. Missouri State at 8-12. Evansville, 6-14. Illinois Chicago, 4-16. And then you've got Valparaiso bringing up the rear at 3-17. So, Mike, why don't we start with the top 2 seeds here and why these 2 teams are kind of bolstering a case for this to be a multi-bid season for the MVC?
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on the main reason, right? I mean, KenPom strength of conference here, 10th out of 32. WCC is getting 2 teams in, so a very strong case for the MVC to have the second team get in here. You got Indiana State, obviously the 1 seed here, first in the country in effective field goal percentage. They're top 25 offense. They do carry a top 100 defense across the country as well. And then they have the star power, Robbie Avila. I was on radio this morning talking about this kid's game. His name's getting out there a lot because of the viral videos of, kind of the aesthetics of his game. So
the aesthetics.
Robbie Avila out there.
Kareem
Abdul-Jabbar out there balling, man. They also have a nice set of guards. Isaiah Swope, Ryan Conwell, Julian Larry can all do some nice things. And then Drake, the 2 seed, top 25 in the country in effective field goal percentage as well. They're top 15 in taking care of the ball. You have to love that. They got plenty of experience from last year's squad. They made the tournament last year. Wing Tucker DeVries averaging 19 points, 7 rebounds, 3.5 assists, just a superstar on the mid-major level. Darnell Brody came back kind of unexpectedly to man that center position for them, bringing back that experience, 11.5 points, 8 boards. And then Coach DeVries, like, built one of the best mid-major programs over the last 4 years here at Drake. If they both make it to the conference tourney final, like, bubble teams better be worried that both teams can get in. So if one of them doesn't make it, though, it's always hard for these mid-major teams to get that second at-large berth. But if you have a quality championship game between these two, it feels like both might need to be in. But we'll see how this committee kind of handles the MVC, which is probably going to be one of the biggest question marks heading down the stretch here. So if they obviously split the regular season here 1-1, it comes down to a championship game between the two. Who are you taking in this matchup?
Oh man, that's a real tough one. I guess I would lean towards Drake. A bit of bias there, right? We had a chance to sit down and chat with Coach DeVries, and this is a Drake team that has a fair amount of experience from the tournament last year, right? So like, Tucker DeVries has absolutely taken his game to another level. And, while it wasn't the deepest of runs last year, Drake very much so was competitive in the tournament when we talk about how they played last year. So I think they can probably capitalize that and build a little bit of momentum into the upcoming conference tournament season. So I'll lean towards Drake. Mike, are you kind of looking at it a similar way, or are you going to keep the contrarian lane open?
Yeah, no, I think I'm with you on the Drake. I'll agree with you on this one. So I got Drake if these two teams play, but they're not the number 1 seed. So we got to show a little love to Indiana State and those Fighting Larry Birds. For
sure. Yeah. So I guess kind of looking at the rest of this bracket here, like who do you have as maybe kind of a sneaky pick, someone that might be able to steal a game or two, or at least advance a little bit deeper than anyone kind of has them anticipating?
So I think Bradley's live to win the tournament. I mean, they're well coached. They have the best defense in the league. Northern Iowa and Belmont, they have solid teams all around. I don't know that they have the ceiling to win it all here. If you want to be a little different, man, Southern Illinois, I know you like them a little bit. They're sitting there in the 6th seed, man. What do you think about the old Salukis, man?
Man, the Salukis are probably one of my favorite teams to watch, right? Like, after Marcus Damask departed for Illinois, they were kind of left for dead. And then, to make things worse, add insult to injury, Lance Jones also transferred out to Purdue, right? And these are players that are making legitimate impacts on, in Purdue's case, a 1 seed, in Illinois' case, a tournament team, right? So, a very big gap for this team to fill. And they managed to put together a roster that finished in the top 50, top 150 in offensive and defensive efficiency on the season. Really good at defending the 3 and getting buckets on offense in the paint. So definitely like the style of basketball that they're playing, and they've got some legitimate star power, right? Like Xavier Johnson averaging 22 points per game. Like he's the type of player that could get hot and really carry this team to a victory and therefore into the tourney, right? So like that's probably the team that's catching my eye. Anyone else that you think could maybe pull a bit of an upset, kind of shock the world in the MVC tournament?
I don't see anybody below 6 really having a big test. It's tough because Indiana State, Drake, Bradley, it's tough. Maybe if that 4-5, how that shakes out in Northern Iowa, just because Bowling Bourne, they got some shooting there. I feel like they could make a little bit of noise, but yeah, man, it's tough. Like, it's hard to see anybody outside of the top 3. That's just kind of where I see this conference coming down to. And I think I'm with you, man. I think Drake, if we get that Indiana State Drake game at the end, it's gonna be a great matchup. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Drake here just because we've seen it before. And Tucker DeVries, man, like, that kid is just so rock solid.
Man, it's crazy how much his game has developed, right? Like, it feels like every year we're asking, just how much more of a leap can he make, and he answers the bell, right? So will be a fun one to watch. And speaking of things that we've seen before, our guy Napesy Hustle in the chat heating us up, showing a little love as we are working our way through the various brackets of these mid-major conference tournaments. And we will head on to our third conference here, heading to the Dirty South, down to the SoCon, right? So looking at a Ken Palm conference strength of 12th overall out of the 32 teams in the entire world of college basketball. In regard to their mid-major ranking, it's number 2 out of the 22 mid-major leagues. So taking a look at the bracket here, you've got Samford checking in as the number 1 overall seed, 15-3 in conference play. UNC Greensboro will be on the opposite side of the bracket, 12-6. As is Chattanooga, another 12-6 team, but they'll be sitting on the 3 line. Western Carolina sitting at 11-7, followed by Furman and Wofford, both checking in at 10-8 for the respective 5 and 6 seeds. Eastern Tennessee State coming in at 8-10 on the season, as is Mercer. Then you've got the Citadel at 3-15, and finally VMI 1-17 in conference play. So look, for me, it feels like there's a pretty clear team to beat here in Samford. So let's talk about that side, right? Like, who do you think is really the biggest challenger to the number 1 overall seed here in the SoCon?
Yeah, I think the main challenger is going to be UNC Greensboro, the 2 seed, top 3 in the conference SoCon play and offense and defensive efficiency. They're 7th best in 3-point percentage in the entire country. Mikael Brown-Jones averaging 19 points, almost 8 rebounds. You have Keyshawn Langley, who we talked about a lot in the preseason, averaged 15 points and nearly 3 assists. But I still think it's going to be tough to beat Samford. They're 5th in the country in effective field goal percentage, 4th in the entire country in 3-point percentage, 3rd in the country in bench minutes. So they just basically are going to come at you in waves. They're going to shoot a ton of 3 balls. If this team makes it in the tournament, they're going to be super live to pull an upset. Forward Truer averaging 15 points, 6 rebounds. AJ Stanton-McRae leading the backcourt here at 13 points and 5 rebounds. So a really, really good league. Obviously, when you're pulling up 12th out of the 32 conferences, you're going to have some very, very strong teams up at the top. But let's talk about maybe some surprises here, man. Like, who do you have here as a dark horse pick in this conference?
Ooh, I'm going to go down to the 5 seed, the Furman Paladins, right? Like, this is a balanced team. They take care of the ball, right? And they've got some experience from this team last year that pulled up a pretty epic upset on Virginia, right? So like you've got JP Pegues, he's given them 18 points and 5 assists per games. Marcus Foster, he's chipping in 17 points and 7.5 boards per game. So, they've got these playmakers that can really put the team on their back. But you've got that experience, which you talked about it earlier on the radio today, right? Like this is the last year of these additional COVID eligibility years, and these teams that are in the mix right now, like they can make a little bit of noise if they've got some experience under their belt. I think Furman checks that box. Mike, what about you? You can't pick Samford. You can't go chalk. You can't tail me on Furman. Who's catching your eye as a potential dark horse in the bracket here?
Man, I'll go deep into the pool here. I'll go to the 8th seed. I'll go to Mercer. Look, they've won 4 of their last 5. They've got wins over Samford, UNC Greensboro, and Furman. They're number 1 in SoCon play, defending the 3, which we just talked about. How well UNC Greensboro and Samford shooting the 3 ball. And they also have a star player, Jalen McCreary, averaging 16 points, 5 rebounds. Mercer is live to really ruin some lives in this conference. And we can't forget to mention Western Carolina. Vontarius Woolbright putting together one of the best seasons that we've seen in quite some time, man. A triple-double threat every time he touches the floor. They're sitting there in the 4 seed. Man, there are so many. We need to talk about Chattanooga sitting there at 12-6. There are a lot of teams that can come out of this conference tournament, but I feel comfortable. with Samford. They kind of dominated this league at 15-3. Won the league by 3 games, and just the style of play, like they just come at you with so many guys that can shoot the 3. So a real tough team to slow down, and they don't get tired because they play so many guys. So definitely Samford looking like the favorite, but a lot of challengers in this one.
Yeah, this one definitely feels like it is a little bit more wide open than some of the conferences and leagues that we have already talked about here. So definitely take a closer look. And like we mentioned off the top, as we get better line of sight to some of these betting and wagering markets around these conference tournaments, we're probably going to be spinning up some content around that. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at OneAndDoneCBB. Make sure you are subscribed here on YouTube, because we're going to be pushing content out left and right now that we are deep into the March Madness season, which will move us on to our next conference that we want to talk about here. We're going to head to the SunBelt. So this is a point, Mike, where we kind of see we see a little bit of a tier break, right? Like Ken Palm has this conference at number 17 out of 32. They're 7th out of the 22 mid majors. So a little bit of a step down from the leagues that we've talked about so far. 14 team conference. We've got Appalachian State sitting in the number 1 seed. They are 16-2 on the season. James Madison opposing them on the opposite side of the bracket, 15-3. Troy also having a pretty solid season, 13-5 in that regard. Arkansas State 11-7. Louisiana sitting at 10-8. Then we've got Southern Miss at 9-9. We've got a 3-pack of teams coming up next at 8-10. Georgia State, Southern Alabama, and Georgia Southern, followed by a 2-pack of teams at 7-11, those being Marshall and Texas State. Rounding it out here, ULM sitting at 6-12 on the year. Coastal Carolina, 5-13. And then in the 14th spot, Old Dominion at 3-15 on the year. So, Mike, let's talk a little bit about Appalachian State, right? Like, they are the number 1 overall seed. They're the team to beat. Let's make sure we give them their flowers as the regular season champ. But then also taking a look at the remaining 13 teams, want to know kind of your initial response to who can potentially push Appalachian State to the brink.
Yeah, with Appalachian State, man, like just an awesome story here. You know, everybody was all over James Madison at the beginning of the year. They beat Michigan State. They started the season 14-0. Everyone was talking about like an at-large berth. Stumbled a little bit down the road here. Appalachian State really took the reins. 26th in the country as of today in defensive efficiency, first in the Sun Belt. They had the huge win in the non-con over Auburn at home. I applaud Auburn for playing that game. Not a lot of high majors will go on the road to play these teams. Appalachian State's won 15 of their last 16 games. Trevon Spillers, breakout out of nowhere, 13 points per game, almost 10 boards. Donovan Gregory, we spotlighted him in our preview show of this conference, 13 points per game, 4.5 rebounds. But yes, I mean, it's still got to be James Madison. Like, we've seen the ceiling with these guys knocking off Michigan State. They have 2 very good players, Terrence Edwards, who averages 17.5 points. And then you have TJ Bickerstaff, the former Boston College big man, averaging 14 points and 8.5 boards. So, yeah, 14 teams in this league, but really it's 2 teams that kind of really stand out, right? It's Appalachian State, the regular season champs, and then James Madison, who's shown a high ceiling this year. So, yeah, those would be my top 2 as I initially look at this bracket.
Yeah, I tend to agree, right? Like, it's those 2 and kind of everybody else, but the everybody else is a gaggle of teams, right? Another dozen teams that will be out there trying to make some noise and trying to pull an upset in this conference tournament, see if they can't steal a bid to the big dance. So let's take a look at the remaining 12 and pick through some squads that we think might be able to make a little bit of noise. I'll go first. I'm gonna take a look at Southern Miss here. They are the 6th seed. They started conference play red hot, right? And then they kind of cooled off. They fell apart down the stretch a little bit, right? But talent-wise, like, they're, easily a top 3 team in this conference. Austin Crowley is injured, right? That injury is something to watch. He did dress in that finale, but he ended up being a DNP. He's given him 16 points per game on the season. We've also got a guy that we are familiar with around these parts, Andre Corbello, sitting at 14 points and 4 assists per game. Then you've also got forward Victor Iwakor coming in 10 points, 6 boards. So, you talk about a 6th seed in a mid-major conference that's just kind of middling in terms of Ken Palm rankings, like there's a fair amount of talent on this Southern Miss team. So, if we see Crowley end up playing and, this team starts to click, I wouldn't be surprised if they start making a bit of a run. Mike, taking a look at the now remaining 11 teams, anyone else that you think can steam up a little bit and maybe surprise a few folks?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you with Southern Miss. I mean, talent-wise, like Austin Crowley started his career at Ole Miss. Cabello, started at Illinois over to St. John's. So these guys have high major experience. South Alabama is sitting there at the 8th seed. I mean, it's kind of a different story than Southern Miss. They started poorly and then finished strong. They've won 6 of their last 8. This team can shoot. They're second in three-point percentage and first in free throw percentage during SunBelt play. 4 guys averaging double figures. Isaiah Gator, averaging 13 points per game. So they have multiple options that they can go to score. It's not a one-man show by any means. Yeah, I don't know that they can win it, but I think they can maybe spoil somebody. But I like Southern Miss as a potential team that could, I wouldn't say shock. I wouldn't be shocked if Southern Miss won this thing.
Yeah, I think their seeding doesn't really reflect their potential, right? So Southern Miss sitting at a 6 seed probably wouldn't be sitting there if they had their full squad at their disposal for the whole season. And I don't mind your Southern Alabama call either, right? Like, definitely a team coming in hot is one that can be be a bit of a thorn in the side. So keep an eye on South Alabama as we roll on to our next conference here. We're going to head to the Big South, heading back down south. Not quite as many teams in this league, right? We're looking at a 9 spot. Ken Palm has them ranked 18th in the country and number 8 out of the 22 mid-majors. Their number 1 overall seed this year is High Point after putting up a 13-3 season. On the opposite end of the bracket, UNC Asheville 12-4 on the year. Gardner Webb posted an 11-5 record in tournament play. Then you've got Winthrop sitting at 8-8. Longwood as well as Presbyterian, the next 2 teams up, they both posted 6-10 records, as did Charleston Southern. Then number 8, USC Upstate 5-11, as did Radford post the same record, 5-11, as the 9 seed. So High Point, our regular season champ, they are the favorite on that end of the bracket and to come out of the Big South Conference. So let's start there. Let's talk a little bit about High Point, and then I want to know, of the remaining 8 teams, if there's someone that you think is potentially going to give them a scare. So
not so fast, my friend. I will say UNC Asheville is probably going to be the betting favorite, and a shock that High Point won this. Remember we were talking preseason that UNC Asheville was going to be one of the largest favorites, in part because they had Drew Pember returning 20 points per game, 8 rebounds this season. Second in offensive efficiency is UNC Asheville as the 2 seed in Big South play. First in defensive efficiency. You have to love that. Like I mentioned, they were the heavy favorites to win the regular season crown. But you have High Point just coming out of nowhere. They're the number 1 seed for a reason. Top 30 in offensive efficiency in the country. Top 100 tempo. They're very young, too. That's the crazy part. They're a year ahead of schedule. This team, as long as they can hold on to their guys, we're still talking this year. They should be able to get into the tournament, but even next year, they're going to be even that much better. Duke Miles, the transfer, 18 points per game. Keswick Gifa averaging 15.5 and 3 assists. Man, these guys, if I were betting this, man, UNC Asheville, it's just tough to bet against Drew Pember and what he's done in his career here at UNC Asheville. But High Point, it feels like, I don't know, maybe I don't want to say destiny, but it feels like, man, everything is kind of clicking for these guys. So definitely the top 2 teams in this league.
Yeah, you love the athleticism that High Point's trotting out, and to make it up to top 30 in the country in offensive efficiency as a mid-major, like that's nothing to sneeze at, right? So fair point, right? Like I wouldn't be surprised at all if UNC Asheville ends up being the odds-on favorite when those odds are posted. And part of the reason why, like, yes, all of the points that you made about this UNC Asheville squad, but also I have to talk about a potential dark horse pick that is on the High Point side of the bracket. For me, it feels like Radford, the 9 seed, is a team that could potentially make a little bit of noise, right? Like they had high expectations coming into the season. The defense has been poor, but they're 3rd in offensive efficiency in Big South play. And Daquan Smith, like their breakout guard, 15 points per game, running out there alongside Kenyon Giles, giving them 15 points as well. Like, we talk about guard play in these one and done tournament settings. We talk about a team that is filling it up to the point where they're the third most efficient offense in the league. Like, Radford as a 9 seed, I feel like is a pretty scary proposition. They do have to make their way through USC Upstate just to earn the right to play High Point. But yeah, like, look, there's the history behind UNC Asheville, the recent history, I should say, but also it kind of feels like High Point's progression through their side of the bracket is a little bit tougher. So, Mike, I like how Radford profiles as a potential upset pick. Anyone else that you think might be able to put a scare in one of the presumed favorites?
No, I mean, I'll agree with the Radford side. I mean, they brought back a bunch of significant players from a 12-win team last year, 12 wins in conference last year. So obviously you need this offense to get hot. They are very poor defensively. So you can see if they're able to get through their first matchup, if they do able to get a few buckets at first, going against the number 1 seed here at High Point. But I just feel like just with the pace that High Point plays out, their athleticism, what they've shown offensively, top 30 in the country, it's just going to be too much for them. But man, we see it every single year. Someone gets bounced early, someone gets bounced in the championship game. Like, it's going to happen. That's why we like to profile some of these teams that are in interesting spots. And I think Radford is, but obviously I would pick High Point and UNC Asheville to make it to the final here.
Yeah, those are definitely the most likely teams, right? But you talk about a playoff format where it just takes one win and literally anything can happen, right? So I like to talk about some of the teams that can potentially make a little bit of noise. And before we move on to our next conference, I think we've got a new friend popping into the chat here. Ty checking in, wanting to skip the line a little bit. He doesn't want to hear about all these mid-majors. He wants to hear about Syracuse and your thoughts on Syracuse. So I'm assuming that this is in the context of their path into and potentially through the conference tournament. But yeah, Mike, why don't you kick us off, right? Like, what are your thoughts on the season that the Orangemen have put together this year?
I mean, it's been great, 20-10 overall. I mean, they're sitting there with 11 wins, going on the road here, the final game of the year at Clemson. I mean, I don't think anybody really predicted that for Syracuse this year, but awesome backcourt here with JJ Starling and Judah Mintz. As far as conference tournament, I mean, we'll talk about the ACC next week. I think probably next Sunday we'll do the Big Six. But odds-on favorites right now, North Carolina and Duke, are locked into either 2 seeds or potentially a 1 for North Carolina, and no worse than 3 seeds for either one. So Syracuse doing a lot better than a lot of us predicted this season, which you love to see in Coach Autry's first year.
Yeah, for sure. It's always an exciting storyline when someone can come in and immediately find success, especially when they are filling the legendary shoes of Jim Boeheim. So definitely a positive story, and one that we've had a lot of fun tracking this season with the Syracuse Orangemen. And like you mentioned, Mike, we will absolutely be talking some ACC tourney here in the not too distant future. So Ty, I appreciate you swinging through. Make sure you're subscribed if you are not already, so you don't miss our in-depth breakdown of that league heading into conference play as we head in to the next conference that we want to talk about, one that has a newly minted name, the Coastal Athletic Association. So the CAA not only trotting out 14 teams, not only trotting out a new name, got the high dollar graphics here, got the budget assigned to the graphics department. So getting a little bit swankier for the CAA. This is a league that came in 19th out of 32 teams in the nation, 9th of the 22 mid-majors. Charleston checking in this year, 15-3 as the number 1 overall seed. Drexel will be number 2 after a 13-5 effort. Hofstra sitting there at 3 after putting up 12-6 record in conference play, as did UNC Wilmington, another 12-6 squad. Towson will be our 5 seed, 11-7 overall. Then we have 3 teams all jumbled up in the middle of this bracket. 6, 7, and 8 all posting 10-8 records are Delaware, Stony Brook, and Monmouth. Number 9 has the inverse of that. Campbell went 8-10 in league play. Northeastern was 7-11 on the season. Elon, our 11 seed, 6-12 in conference play. North Carolina, AT&T, 5-13, and then rounding us out at 13-14 respectively, William and Mary and Hampton, the last 2 teams here in the power rankings on this bracket for Coastal Athletic Association. So, Mike, the CAA looking at Charleston up top again, a fine season, 15-3 overall. So tell us a bit about how they amassed that very impressive record, and then they've got a long way to go to hoist this trophy when it's all said and done. So who should they be keeping an eye on while they're working their way through the bracket?
Yeah, they do have a long way to go. That's a that's a lot of teams they have to sift through here. But number 1 offense in the CAA. So they're on a 9-game winning streak. We talked about how versatile their forwards are, how well they can shoot the ball, stretch the floor out. They play at a top 50 tempo, chucking up a ton of threes. I mean, 6 guys averaging between 9 and 13 points. So it's by committee here. Ryan Smith, 13 points per game. You love what Charleston did. They were a darling last year when they got in to pull the upset. That did not happen. But a lot of experience on this team came back, and you can see why they're primed to get back into the NCAA tournament here. I think UNC Wilmington, the 4 seed, probably the popular pick, I should say, to take down this CAA conference tournament. They beat Charleston twice during the regular season. They also beat Kentucky in the non-con. Remember that way back in the early part of the season. They are the second best offense in the league. They take care of the ball. Trezarian White, who we profiled as one of the best players in the league in the preseason, followed it up with 19.5 points and 7 rebounds per game. So I'm really looking at UNC Wilmington here, and I know a lot of teams are not going to want to see this team in the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, look, like, yes, when they defeated Kentucky, it was at the phase of the season where Kentucky largely didn't know which direction was up. But nonetheless, right, like even if it's a Kentucky squad that's still getting their sea legs, a win in against those Wildcats is a banner moment for UNC Wilmington. So wouldn't be surprised if they are a favorite dark horse pick on coming out of the CAA. The dark horse pick that's kind of catching my eye, Stony Brook. They are the 7th seed, so they will have to face off against number 10 to earn the right to play Drexel in the second round. This is a team that's coming in top 5 in both offensive and defensive efficiency in CAA play. They're 37th in D1 experience in the country, right? So a lot of guys that have played a lot of basketball and been together in the system for a good amount of time. So, you know, we typically see that continuity and that maturity really shine brightest in these type of formats. And they've got a pretty bright spot on the roster, right? Tyler Stevenson Moore giving them 16 points per game this year, right? So definitely like Stony Brook to be able to make their way out of that first game and to really put up a good fight against Drexel. So that's, you know, beyond UNC Wilmington. That's who kind of catches my eye. Mike, anyone else among these 14 teams that you think can maybe string together a couple of wins?
I'm really just looking at the top 4, man. I'm not diving anything lower than that. I mean, Charleston's in the mix. It wouldn't shock me. I mean, Charles Thompson, he's been there forever. 9.5 points, 8.5 rebounds. They're the number 1 defense in the CAA during CAA play. So you like that. Defense can always, win you a game. But to win it all, man, I'm really looking at these top 4 teams, especially Charleston and UNC Wilmington.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I'd be particularly surprised if we see, anyone really making a deep run. Like I said, I think Stony Brook has the horses to do it, but even with that, I mean, they're going to be a long shot to say the least, right? So we'll keep an eye on those betting markets as they come out. Maybe sprinkle a half a unit or so on Stony Brook, but ultimately it's the top 4, and then it's kind of everyone else. So we will move on to the next conference that we're going to be breaking down here, the Horizon League. This one is pretty interesting, right? Like we've got an 11-team conference here, and a pretty tightly packed race. Oakland finished number 1 overall, but after that, we've got a ton of teams. 2 through 8 here are all posting winning records in conference play. Youngstown State is the 2 seed. Then you've got Green Bay and Wright State both at 13-7, followed by Northern Kentucky and Milwaukee 12-8 for their conference records. Cleveland State and Purdue Fort Wayne, the 2 remaining double-digit win teams here in league play, 11-9 for both of those squads. Rounding us out, Robert Morris, IUPUI, and Detroit Mercy will be filling the 9, 10, and 11 seeds. So, Mike, I mentioned very competitive league here, arguably the most competitive of the mid-majors. So I'm not sure if we have a crystal clear favorite, right? So do you agree with that sentiment? And if not, or if so, rather, like which of these 8 winning seasoned teams do you think can be the one to hoist the trophy in the Horizon League?
Yeah, I mean, I think a legit 8 teams could win this thing. I would not be shocked, which makes this, obviously 20th out of 32 doesn't quite show the competitive in the league, right? That just looks at it from a macro level when you look at all 32 conferences. But 10th out of 22 in the mid-majors. Wright State, that 3 seed, we've been banging that drum since the preseason, the number 1 offense in the Horizon League. They're second in the country in effective field goal percentage. So out of all 362 teams, they're second in the country in effective field goal percentage. Very poor defensively, very, very poor defensively, but they have a big 3 that we have been talking about all season. Trey Calvin, their superstar guard, averaged 19.5 points, 4 assists. Tanner Holden, who left to go to Ohio State, then came back, averaged 16 points and 6 rebounds. Yo-yo there. Brandon Noel, nice sophomore season here, 15 points, 8 rebounds. I think Wright State has not only the potential to win this conference tournament, but they have the potential to upset somebody in the big dance with, obviously Calvin Holden and Noel here. I think Green Bay, the 4 seed, also interesting here, balanced on offense and defense. They're one of the surprise stories in college basketball. Now, they only have 1 guy that averages double figures, and he averages 20 points per game. That's the Wyoming transfer guard, Noah Reynolds. He has to do a lot of heavy lifting for this team, but you don't mind that in a conference tournament setting where 1 guy just gets hot and you ride him all the way to the championship. So Green Bay, a solid story here. Oakland is the number 1 seed, very good offensively, solid defensively. They beat Xavier. We actually picked them to cover that spread. They went ahead and just beat him outright on the road. For Trey Townsend, he's a stud, 16.5 points, 7.5 rebounds, man. There's like I said, there's 8 teams that can win this thing, man. You got a couple that you feel good about?
Yeah, you profiled 1, 3, and 4 for us. So I'll start off with the number 2 seed, Youngstown State, number 1 on the offensive side and number 2 on the defensive side in terms of league play, and they are 16th in the country in D1 experience. So veteran squad can do a lot, led by their forward, Ziggy Reed, 15 points, 5 boards on the season. Definitely think that Youngstown State can be a team that can heat up and make their way through this very tough bracket, as can be said about Milwaukee coming in as the 6th seed. They're coming in red hot. They've won 5 out of their last 6 games, better offensively than they are on the defensive side. And they're powered by star guard BJ Freeman, giving them 20 points, 7 boards, and 4 assists. So you talk about a team here that has the guy that can really shoulder the load. Feels like Milwaukee State. Milwaukee is a potential team to keep an eye on here. But point being, looking at the Horizon League overall, when these betting lines come out, I'm imagining there's going to be some pretty interesting numbers that are ultimately going to inform which pick I stake my claim on. We'll definitely have to keep a close eye on the Horizon League as we shift our focus to the Summit League, the next league up here. Again, showing out with the graphics budget. Summit League comes in 23rd in KenPom's rankings, 13th among the mid-majors. It's a 9-team league. South Dakota State is the number 1 overall seed, 12-4 on the season. UMKC as well as North Dakota, 2-3. They both put up 10-6 records. St. Thomas finished the year at 9-7. North Dakota State, an even 8-8. Nebraska, Omaha finished 7-9. They earned the 6th seed with that. And then rounding us out, Denver, Oral Roberts, and South Dakota are 7, 8, and 9. So South Dakota State, like they pulled away for the regular season title down the stretch. Mike, tell us a bit about the South Dakota side, and then your thoughts on how they profile for a tournament run here.
Yeah, sitting here at the 1 seed, South Dakota State, that's what we thought was going to happen in the preseason. They were a heavy preseason favorite, 25th in the country in effective field goal percentage. They're top 3 on both sides of the ball in conference play. Zeke Mayo, just another phenomenal season, 19.6 rebounds, 3.5 assists. But William Kyle giving them some scoring punch inside the forward, 13 points per game, 6.5 rebounds. If they get into the tournament, man, like this is a team a few years ago that had Baylor Shireman. We were picking them to pull the upset. Just, still bringing in quality players, still holding on to some of their quality players. So definitely a team that could pull an upset in the NCAA tournament. There's only 9 teams, though, Eric, in this conference. So you got a heavy favorite here in South Dakota State. I got to go with, someone like maybe a UMKC. Who else in this thing? I know they're the 2 seed, man, but I don't know. Like, what's say you in the rest of this conference here, man?
Well, it helps that Kansas City has beaten South Dakota State already, right? So like they've that's helped them earn the 2 seed overall. They come in rated number 1 in defensive efficiency in the Summit League during league play, and they play like a super aggressive, tough style, right? Like definitely can poke out some turnovers, do a really good job of limiting the 3 ball. This is a KC squad that lost a lot in the transfer portal, but they've bounced back really nicely. A lot of that has to do with their swingman Jamar Brown coming in, giving them 15 points and 6 rebounds or 6 boards per game. Like, you see him reach back and get to his ceiling, and this KC side, like they can compete with anybody on this side of the bracket, right? So a little bit chalky, talking about the 1 and 2 seeds here. So Mike, let's mix it up a little bit. Is there a 3rd team here that you think can maybe surprise either of the chalk picks that we put up?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's South Dakota State, kind of a cliff here that you jump off of. I like the UMKC deal here, but if I had to pick one, I guess it'd be Denver.
Okay.
Denver here has the nation's leading scorer. So the 7 seed, that always helps.
That's not nothing.
They started off well in conference play. They fell apart late, and a lot of that is due to 359th in defensive efficiency. They don't stop anybody. So if you're not going to stop anybody, you got to outscore them. That's where Tommy Bruner comes in. The nation's leading scorer, averaged 24.5 points, 4.5 assists, beat out Zach Edey by 0.5 point to take down the regular season scoring title there. So anytime you have that type of player, right, like someone that can get hot and, go for 30, 35 and just make it open everything up for your offense, because if you're not going to play a lot of defense, you have to maximize your possessions on offense. So I think Denver's interesting, but, South Dakota State should win this one. I see Kansas City maybe giving them a little bit of a run here.
Yeah. The Jackrabbits feel like they will be a clear favorite with good reason, but hey, I mean, having the nation's leading scorer on that Denver squad, like they at least you have to chalk them up as dangerous, if nothing else. So we'll keep a close eye on that one as we turn our attention to the next league that we're talking about here, the ASUN. Look, this is a pretty interesting one overall, right? Like we've got 10 teams, gonna be 12 teams in this league. Eastern Kentucky is sitting as our 1 seed after posting a 12-4 record. They're one of 4 teams that had a winning record on the season. Eastern Kentucky, Stetson, Lipscomb, and Austin P, the 1 through 4 seeds with that double-digit winning record. North Florida at 9-7 did come up on the right side of 500. That earned them the 5th seed. Then you've got North Alabama at 7-9, Florida Gulf Coast 8-8, Queens sitting there at 7-9, Kennesaw State, and then Jacksonville are rounding out the teams that will be participating in their tournament. Central Arkansas and Bellarmine are not making their way into the conference tournament here. So, Mike, Eastern Kentucky, they followed through on their preseason expectation. They were very much so, kind of the consensus pick. They managed to handle their business. So they come in as the 1 seed. They're second straight season winning 12 games, top 3 in both offensive and defensive efficiency in the ASUN. And they were led by guys like Leland Walker and his 15.5 points, also chipped in 4 dimes per game. You've also got Isaiah Cozart for them, another 15.5 point scorer. He was averaging a double-double, got him 10 boards along with those 15.5 points. So, feels like Eastern Kentucky is, very much so the favorite, and they're going to be in prime position to run through this bracket. But that doesn't mean that they are infallible, right, Mike? Are there any teams that you think can potentially, get them on a down night and maybe make a little bit of noise in this tournament?
Yeah, I think there's a few. I think it starts with Austin P, the 4 seed. Another team, I just talked about a team that didn't play a lot of defense a second ago. They don't play a lot of defense either, but they're second in offensive efficiency in the ASUN. Coming in hot, they've won 7 of their last 8. 5 guys average double figures. They have a star guard, DeMarcus Sharp, 16.5 points, 6.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists per game. Austin P, very dangerous squad. Lipscomb, the 3 seed, only 20-game winner overall in this conference. They're first in offensive efficiency. They also don't play a lot of defense. They're 11th in the country, though, in effective field goal percentage, which you really like for, picking upset teams to win their conference tournament. Like Austin P, they're coming in. They've won 7 of their last 8 as well. So both teams playing really well. Going to be very dangerous for Eastern Kentucky. I think overall talent-wise, Eastern Kentucky is hands down better than both teams. But you got some star power with Austin P. Lipscomb, you've got a team that's really good at creating offense. So one of those teams that they catch fire and could make a run through this tournament.
Yeah, both having fine seasons in their own regard, but are really going to have their work cut out for them if they want to knock off the 1 seed here in the ASUN. So we'll keep an eye on that as we move over to the OVC, the Ohio Valley Conference, another team that doesn't have any time for these buys or double buys, right? It's an 11-team league, but they invite 8 to their tournament. They ranked 28th out of 32 leagues, according to KenPom, 18th in the mid-majors. And we got a bit of a logjam here. 1, 2, and 3. Little Rock, UT Martin, Morehead State, all posting 14-4 records. Western Illinois, 13-5. Then you got Tennessee State at 10-8. So 5 double-digit win teams in this league. SIU, Edwardsville, 9-9 on the season. Eastern Illinois, Southern Indiana are the remaining 2 teams that will round out at the 7 and 8 seed. We've got Tennessee Tech, Southeast Missouri State, and Lindenwood are the 3 teams that were not invited to the tournament. So Mike had a 3-way share of that regular season title, right? 3 teams at 14-4. So that really begs the question, right? Of these 14-4 squads, like who do you think's got the inside track to win it?
Man, I talked about Destiny earlier. I didn't want to use it, but I do want to use it for Morehead. They were dealt a pretty big blow before the start of the season. The reigning OVC Player of the Year and preseason Player of the Year guard Mark Freeman was ruled out for the year. They went ahead and got a share of the conference, of the regular season conference title anyway. So sitting here at the 3 seed, they still finished with the top offense efficiency-wise in the OVC, still finished with the top defense in the OVC. You have to love that. They're dominating inside on both ends of the floor. Coach Bradlin, he's built a perennial power. They're 13-plus wins in the last 4 years in conference. Riley Minix, just an awesome, awesome player, finished with a 20-10 season. Jordan Lathan, the guard, averaged 16 points and 6 rebounds on the year as well. So, man, if I had to pick maybe a surprise team out of this one, I think I'm going to SIU Edwardsville, the 6th seed. They take care of the ball. They're balanced on both sides. They're 55th in the country in D1 experience, so you like that. You also have to like their guard, DeMarco Minor, averaging 16 points and 8 rebounds. So, Eric, between the other 2 regular season, co-champs, as you would call it, which one do you see having the, easiest path or making a run here?
Yeah, I'll take the easy way out. Little Rock sitting at the 1 seed, right? So it gives them a little bit of an advantage in terms of their path through the bracket. But they have that 1 seed because they had a fine season, right? Like very very steady on both ends of the ball. They come in absolutely white hot, right? 9-game winning streak. They ripped off 12 of their last 13 games. So definitely have the wind at their back. Arkansas's transfers have been a big story for this Little Rock team. They have guard KJ Robinson. He's given them 16 points per game. And you've got Mikal Mitchell, right? One of the Mitchell brothers. He's in double figures for them, 10 points per game. So, Little Rock, kind of a lame pick because they're sitting at the 1 seed. But, when you're talking about a league that has 3 teams, a 3-way co-champion in terms of their regular season, not exactly as chalky as a pick as it might seem. So, like how this one sets up for Little Rock, and we will set you up for the next conference here. We're going to head over to the Patriot League. This is kind of an interesting one, right? Like, we've got Colgate just absolutely running away with it, 16-2 on the season, and then we've got a real logjam. Basically, everyone was losing to Colgate and then just kind of treading water against the rest of the conference. American, Bucknell, Boston U, Lafayette, Lehigh, Navy, all of these teams are within 3 or 4 games of one another. On the tail end, there's a bit of a fall off. Army sitting at 6-12, Holy Cross sitting at 6-12. Finally, Loyola Marymount 5-13 on the season. But like I mentioned off the top, Colgate just absolutely ran away with this one. Excuse me, that was Loyola Maryland at the bottom of the conference there. So Colgate, they take down their 3rd straight regular season title. And they're looking to, keep the streak alive. If they win out in this tournament, that'll be their 3rd straight conference tournament. So number 1 offense and defense in the league. The offense overall has taken a bit of a step back from the last few years, but the defense has improved by a pretty wide measure, right? So 3 starters returning from that NCAA tournament squad from last year. And Braden Smith is really the straw that stirs the drink here for him. 12 points per game, 5 rebounds, 6 assists. So, it feels to me like this is probably one of like the clearest pictures that we have in terms of, who we like to make their way through the bracket. But I mean, Mike, is there anyone that you think can, maybe knock Colgate off the pedestal, sort of interrupt this little mini dynasty they've been putting together?
No way, man. It's Colgate than everyone else, man. Like the Americans sitting at, they got a star here. Matt Rogers averaged 16 points, 6 rebounds from the forward position. I mean, they beat Colgate on the road last week, so we've seen it. They're the 2 seed. They're the 2nd best offense in the league. They don't have nearly the defense or the manpower that Colgate has, though. So for me, this is one of the easiest picks. Like, we can almost just write in Colgate into the NCAA tournament, but this is March Madness, right? Like, probably going to eat my words on this one, but history has proven it. They have the talent top to bottom on this roster, really like Colgate, to make it through pretty easily. But American as the 2 seed, man, watch out.
Yeah, for me, like it almost feels like you can write Colgate in there and Sharpie, but because they're projected to be such stark favorites, I mean, if American has a big number next to him, might be worth a sprinkle because again, it is that one and done format that literally anything can happen. But feels like we got a pretty clean picture on how the Patriot League will play out, which will take us to our last league that we'll be talking here tonight. And clean is the opposite of how things played out with this one, at least with regard to their conference tournament play last year. They have 9 teams in this league, but they only take 8 of them into the conference tournament. And if you remember, Merrimack won the conference tournament last year, but technically couldn't make their way into the NCAA tournament, which vaulted Fairleigh Dickinson into the big dance and into the history books as they bounced Purdue. So definitely an interesting storyline from last season. Not sure if they can top that this year. KenPom has them 32nd out of 32 leagues, 22nd in the mid-major rankings. We do have a tie up top, Central Connecticut and the aforementioned Merrimack, both sporting 13-3 records. Sacred Heart, the 3 seed, got to double-digit wins, 10-6. Then we have Lemoyne and Fairleigh Dickinson coming in at 4-5 with 9-7 records. Wagner sitting at 7-9. Then we have LIU and St. Francis rounding out the tournament field. Stonehill, unfortunately, is staying home after a 12-14 effort. So, mentioned before the absolute chaos that was the result of this NEC last year. Mike, I think we probably got a little bit of a clearer picture in terms of who's making their way out, but we do have, we do have that tie up top, right? The co-regular season champion. So who do you like to come out of the Northeast?
Yeah, I'll go with Central Connecticut, the Blue Devils. No, not those Blue Devils. A little bit different, but come in winning 4 straight. They're third in offensive efficiency and second in defensive efficiency and NEC play. Alan Jean Ross, their forward. A nice season, 15 points per game, 5 rebounds per game. Feels like you kind of got to go chalky whenever you have 2 teams really separating from the pack on the conference that is rated 32nd out of 32 conferences on KenPom and 22nd out of 22 mid-majors. So chalk for me here. I don't see anyone else really doing much. What do you think about this Merrimack squad?
And Merrimack is, they're going to be coming in with an eye on revenge, right? Like, won the tournament, couldn't make their way into the dance, and then they saw the team that went in as their replacement, the team that they just beat, pulling one of the the biggest upsets in March Madness history. So, look, Merrimack, they're the 2 seed this year. They get it done defensively. We talk a lot about offensive and defensive ranks in the context of league play. Well, in the entire country, Merrimack is 76 overall in defensive efficiency. So, anytime that you're putting the clamps on a team, you have to get the ball in the basket in your own regard. They were on a 10-game winning streak at one point earlier in the season. They eventually dropped that finale to Sacred Heart. So, look, I think Merrimack can absolutely repeat as the tournament champion, and this time punch their ticket in. A lot of that has to do with their star guard, right? Jordan Durkak, averaging 18, 6, and 4. So, player that can definitely put the squad on his back. A team that is coming in looking to avenge their technicality that kept them out of the tournament last year. Like how the storyline and narrative street sets up for Merrimack, and that about does it. 12 conferences in the books. So it took a nice big chunk out of the conference previews. Like I mentioned before, we're going to be continuing these on as we head into tournament play. But Mike, a lot to cover here on tonight's show. We, like I said, went through 12 leagues here. Any kind of overarching thoughts, any bow that you want to put on the 12 leagues that we covered here tonight?
Yeah, if you're betting, look for the nice number, because in the mid majors, especially as you get down to the lower tiers, like absolute havoc can be wrecked. We've seen 7, 8, 9 seeds win these things. It's a one and done, just like it is in March. So it's one of those things, man. Like, you just want to pick profiles, see how teams match up, see what teams are playing well, who's got star power that can maybe carry them for a few games through the conference tournaments. So looking forward to doing some more of these. We got more mid majors coming. We'll have some of the more lower high majors that we'll be talking about before we drop the big 6 power conferences. So yeah, excited to do this, man. And if you think you know what's happening, it's college basketball. You probably don't have an idea, but we're here to bring you at least the most information, so that way you can make smart picks, the best bets that you can get out there, and just have the overall information, because it's time to get ready to dive into March Madness.
Man, couldn't agree more, right? Like, just when you think you've got your finger on the pulse, one of these conference tournaments just pops up and slaps you in the face. So as we talk about these betting lines coming out, as we've mentioned a couple of times, definitely make sure you're subscribed here. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at OneAndDoneCBB, because we will be putting out some of our favorite picks and just the general kind of guidance there, right? Like, even a heavy favorite, you got to be getting a pretty good number to feel good about putting a little coin down. And there are going to be some ugly plays and teams that I'm going to be baited into because they're carrying a ton of juice, right? But that is part of the fun of this conference tournament season. Like Mike mentioned, we'll be back to scoop up the remaining conference tournaments in the coming days and weeks. So if you are not already, make sure you're subscribed here, but also scroll a little bit further down, hit that notification bell, because every now and again we'll catch a wild hair. We'll spin up a live before lock. Maybe we'll do like a prize pick show. Maybe we'll do a betting preview. You never really know here. So the best way to make sure that you're not missing any of that is to make sure that you're subscribed and you have that notification bell on. Those two things together are the easiest way to make sure you get this bread.
Thanks for stopping by the office. Get your fantasy prescription by subscribing to the channel and checking out drrodo.com. And until the next visit, be well and take care.